I'm Luna, a 28-year-old small business owner living in Chicago. I've decided to share my story, hoping it might resonate with others who've faced similar challenges. This journey began 3 years ago, and though I've found some resolution, the emotional impact lingers. Let me take you through the pivotal moments of my life with Ryan, my now ex-husband, and the turbulent times we endured. I first met Ryan through mutual friends, and our connection was instant. He was charming, wealthy, and lived a life of luxury. Our relationship was vibrant and filled with joy. Ryan's affluence allowed him to be incredibly generous, showering me with gifts and making me feel cherished. On the surface, everything seemed perfect. We dated for 3 wonderful years before tying the knot. Ryan's financial stability meant he was always the one treating me to lavish dinners, designer clothes, and extravagant trips. While I appreciated his kindness, I often felt uneasy about the imbalance in our financial contributions. My salary from my small business wasn't anywhere near what Ryan made, and though he insisted it was normal for him to spoil me, I couldn't shake off the feeling of inadequacy. When we decided to move in together, Ryan reassured me that he had inherited a house from his family, so there was no need to worry about rent. Instead, we agreed to split the other expenses equally. I was both relieved and nervous. I wanted to contribute fairly, but was unsure if I could keep up with his lifestyle. Ryan's confidence in our arrangement, coupled with his generous nature, eventually put me at ease. Our first major challenge came when I had to meet Ryan's family. He was busy with work commitments and couldn't join them, so I was left to host his parents and sister on my own. Ryan had warned me about his family's judgmental tendencies, but I wasn't prepared for how uncomfortable their visit would be. Ryan's mother, Helen, was particularly harsh. From the moment they arrived at our Chicago home, it was clear she didn't approve of me. Her disapproval was palpable, and she wasted no time expressing it. "So you're the woman Ryan has been seeing?" Helen asked with a critical tone. "I must say, I didn't expect you to live in this house. Do you even contribute to the household expenses?" I tried to explain, the house is fully paid for, but we split all other bills evenly. I hoped to clear up any misunderstandings, but Helen quickly dismissed my explanation. "Just because the house is paid for doesn't mean you're not taking advantage of him. Remember, this is his house, not yours." The conversation grew increasingly uncomfortable as Helen and Ryan's father, Frank, continued to criticize me. Frank, though less vocal, seemed to share his wife's sentiments. Ryan's sister, Nina, who was married to a wealthy billionaire, also joined in the disapproval. Her disdain was apparent, and whenever I tried to engage her in conversation, she responded with irritation. Despite my efforts to bridge the gap, Nina only seemed interested in one-upping me with her tales of luxury. "I'm married to a billionaire," she'd say with a smirk. "It's a different world compared to this." The visit left me feeling isolated and disheartened. Ryan's lack of support was glaring. Whenever his family criticized me, he'd brush it off, suggesting that they meant well and that I was overreacting. This dismissal only compounded my feelings of discomfort. Months later, we planned an engagement party in New York. I was excited but apprehensive about how Ryan's family would react. Despite our agreement to split the expenses, his family's criticism of my spending continued. Helen's harsh comments about my expenditures only added to the growing tension. Ryan's failure to stand up for me during this time made me question whether our relationship could withstand the strain. At the engagement party, the atmosphere was strained. Helen's criticism was relentless, targeting everything from the cost of the party to my spending habits. "You shouldn't have splurged so much," she remarked sharply. "It's as if you're draining Ryan's account before you're even married. At this rate, you'll end up with a backyard wedding." Ryan didn't defend me. Instead, he seemed to align himself with his family's viewpoint. This made me feel even more alienated and unsupported. Despite our agreement to split the costs, the criticism from Ryan's family and his inability to stand up for me were deeply hurtful. The turning point came during a special dinner celebrating Ryan's recent promotion. We had planned a grand event to mark the occasion, hoping to lift our spirits after all the tension. I had arranged everything meticulously, wanting the night to be perfect. But as the evening unfolded, it became clear that the underlying issues were far from resolved. Helen took the opportunity during her speech to publicly humiliate me. "I want to thank everyone for being here to celebrate Ryan's success," she began. "But it's unfortunate that his good fortune didn't extend to his choice of partner. It's clear that he's been supporting a leech, and it's a shame that he has to work so hard to maintain her lavish lifestyle." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I was devastated, feeling as though my worst fears had been confirmed. Ryan's agreement with his mother's accusations and his own remarks about his financial strain pushed me to my breaking point. The public humiliation was the last straw. The night of Ryan's promotion dinner was a pivotal moment, one that left me feeling utterly betrayed and humiliated. As Helen's words echoed in the room, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The term leech was harsh and cruel, and it wasn't just the insult that hurt, it was the fact that Ryan seemed to agree with her. The weight of that public humiliation became unbearable. After Helen's degrading remarks, I tried to keep my composure. I forced a smile and engaged in light conversation, but inside, I was crushed. Ryan, on the other hand, avoided eye contact and said little. The evening that was supposed to celebrate his success had turned into a showcase of how alienated and unsupported I felt. When we got home, I confronted Ryan. "How could you let your mother speak to me like that?" I demanded. My voice shook with emotion. "And how could you agree with her?" Ryan looked uncomfortable but offered a weak explanation. "I don't know what you want me to say, Luna. My family is, well, they are who they are. I can't always control them. But you could have stood up for me." I insisted. "You're my husband. I need you to defend me, not side with them." Ryan's response was dismissive. I didn't want to make things worse. "You know how my family can be." That night, I lay awake, feeling like a stranger in my own home. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a disagreement. It was a deep-seated issue with no easy resolution. The support I had hoped for from Ryan seemed non-existent, and his alignment with his family's views only compounded my distress. The days following the dinner were tense. Ryan was distant and avoided discussing the incident. Instead, he buried himself in work, leaving me to navigate the fallout on my own. I tried to reach out to him, to talk through our issues, but each attempt was met with indifference. It was during this time that I sought solace from my mother. She had always been my rock, offering unwavering support through my life's ups and downs. I visited her in Denver, hoping that a change of scenery and some maternal comfort would help me clear my head. My mother listened patiently as I poured out my heart. "Luna, you don't deserve to be treated this way," she said gently. "I've always known you to be strong and capable. If you're unhappy, you need to take action. You can't let anyone, not even Ryan, make you feel less than you are." Her words were a balm to my wounded spirit. She encouraged me to think about what I truly wanted and reminded me of my worth. With her support, I began to seriously consider my options. Back in Chicago, I started taking concrete steps to address my situation. I began the process of divorce, though it was a difficult and emotional decision. The thought of ending my marriage was daunting, but the lack of support from Ryan and his family had become too much to bear. As I initiated the divorce proceedings, Ryan's behavior grew more erratic. He began to harass me, making the separation process even more challenging. His attempts to undermine my confidence and make me feel guilty for leaving only reinforced my resolve to move on. To escape the constant tension, I decided to relocate. I found a small, cozy house in Denver and began preparing for a fresh start. The move was both liberating and overwhelming. I was leaving behind not just a city, but a life that had become fraught with emotional turmoil. In the midst of packing up my belongings, I also made the difficult decision to resign from my job. My small business, which had been a source of pride and stability, needed my full attention. It was time to focus on nurturing it and rediscovering my independence. The separation was tough, and the harassment from Ryan continued to haunt me, but the support from my mother and the promise of a new beginning helped me persevere. The journey was far from over, but I felt a growing sense of hope and determination as I prepared to start anew. Starting over in Denver was both exhilarating and daunting. The change of scenery was a welcome shift from the oppressive environment I had left behind, but the reality of rebuilding my life was setting in. The process of divorcing Ryan was underway, and each step felt like a small victory in my journey toward reclaiming my independence. My new home, a quaint house on the outskirts of Denver, became my sanctuary. It was modest but cozy, a stark contrast to the grandeur of the house I had shared with Ryan. As I unpacked boxes and arranged my belongings, I felt a sense of empowerment. For the first time in a long while, I was doing something solely for myself. The separation from Ryan, however, was not without its difficulties. Despite the legal proceedings, he continued to harass me with phone calls and messages. His attempts to make me feel guilty were relentless, and he tried to undermine my confidence at every turn. But instead of succumbing to his tactics, I found strength in my new surroundings and the support from my mother. My business, which had been a side project while I was married, became my main focus. I threw myself into it, dedicating long hours to make it thrive. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of doubt, but I was determined to succeed. Each milestone, no matter how small, felt like a personal triumph. I could feel the seeds of my independence taking root. One afternoon, as I was working on a new project, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. I hesitated before answering. "Hello. Luna, it's Nina," came the cold voice on the other end. I had not expected to hear from her. Nina, Ryan's sister, had always been particularly critical of me. Her tone was dismissive. "I just wanted to let you know that Ryan is falling apart. His career is taking a hit, and his personal life is in shambles." I listened quietly, my emotions a mix of vindication and indifference. "Is that so?" "Yes," Nina continued. "I thought you should know. I don't expect you to feel sympathy, but I thought you'd be interested." I ended the call and shook my head. The family's drama was no longer my concern. My focus had shifted to my own recovery and growth. I didn't need their validation or their interference in my life. The new chapter was filled with small victories. My business began to gain traction, and I started to feel a renewed sense of purpose. I even began to explore dating again, cautiously opening my heart to the idea of new relationships. It was a process of rediscovering who I was and what I wanted from life. One evening, while attending a local networking event, I met someone who seemed genuinely kind and supportive. His name was Alex, and our conversation flowed effortlessly. We shared similar interests and values, and he seemed genuinely interested in me as a person, not just as a potential partner. It was a refreshing change. As weeks turned into months, I continued to rebuild my life. The harassment from Ryan eventually subsided, and the legal aspects of the divorce were finalized. I felt a sense of relief and accomplishment. I had faced countless obstacles and emerged stronger and more self-assured. Reflecting on my journey, I realized how far I had come. The toxic environment I had once been trapped in was behind me. I had taken control of my life, focusing on my business, my well-being, and my future. The emotional scars remained, but they served as reminders of my resilience and growth. In Denver, I found not only a new home but also a renewed sense of self. I learned to value my own worth and to seek out relationships and opportunities that aligned with my values and goals. My story was one of overcoming adversity and embracing the possibilities of a new beginning. As I looked out at the city lights from my new home, I felt a glimmer of hope for the future. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I was ready to face it with the strength and independence I had fought so hard to achieve. As the months passed, Denver became more than just a place I had moved to. It became a symbol of my transformation. My new life was far from perfect, but it was mine, and that realization was a profound source of strength and satisfaction. My business had grown beyond my expectations. What started as a small side project was now thriving, and I felt a deep sense of pride in what I had achieved. The long hours and sleepless nights were paying off, and my financial stability was more secure than ever. I had learned to balance work and personal life, allowing myself time to rest and enjoy the small pleasures that I had once overlooked. One crisp autumn afternoon, I received a message from my mother. She wanted to visit me in Denver, and I was thrilled at the prospect. Her support had been unwavering throughout my ordeal, and I was eager to show her the new life I had built. Her visit was a mix of celebration and reflection. We spent time exploring the city, reminiscing about the past, and discussing my plans for the future. During her visit, I invited Alex to meet her. The introduction went well, and Alex's genuine kindness was evident. My mother could see how much he respected and cared for me. It was a comfort to have her approval, but more importantly, it reinforced my belief that I deserved a partner who valued me for who I was. One evening, as we sat on the porch enjoying a quiet moment, my mother said, "Luna, I'm so proud of how far you've come. You've turned a difficult situation into something beautiful. It takes incredible strength to do that." Her words were a balm to my soul. I had spent so long doubting my worth, and hearing her affirm my journey was deeply validating. I had been through so much, and yet, here I was, standing tall and ready to embrace the future. Life continued to unfold in new and exciting ways. My business expanded, and I took on new projects that challenged and inspired me. I was no longer just surviving, I was thriving. Each day brought new opportunities and experiences, and I embraced them with open arms. Alex and I grew closer, and our relationship deepened. He supported my ambitions and shared in my joys and challenges. Our connection was built on mutual respect and understanding, something I had longed for and finally found. As we navigated our relationship, I felt a sense of hope and optimism that had been absent for too long. Despite the positive changes, there were moments of reflection. I occasionally thought about Ryan and his family and the impact they had on my life. But instead of dwelling on the past, I chose to focus on the present and the future. The lessons I had learned were valuable, and I used them to guide my decisions and relationships. The journey to self-discovery had been painful but enlightening. I had learned to value my own worth, to stand up for myself, and to seek out relationships that were supportive and fulfilling. My story was no longer defined by the struggles I had faced, but by the strength and resilience I had discovered within myself. As the year drew to a close, I found myself reflecting on the progress I had made. I was living a life that aligned with my values and dreams. The emotional scars from my past were still there, but they no longer held power over me. Instead, they served as reminders of my strength and my ability to overcome adversity. With each passing day, I felt more confident in my new life. The future was bright, and I was ready to embrace it with all the promise and possibilities it held. I had faced challenges and emerged stronger, and I was determined to continue growing and exploring the opportunities that lay ahead. As I looked out over the Denver skyline, I felt a profound sense of peace. My journey had been one of transformation and self-discovery, and I was grateful for the strength and resilience that had carried me through. The new dawn was not just the start of a new chapter, it was the beginning of a life I had fought so hard to create. And with that, I looked forward to the future with hope, optimism, and a renewed sense of purpose.